This past weekend, I pissed off a lot of Halo fans in the Halo community. Obviously, this was before the recent news where Bonnie Ross was leaving, but my takes and tweets ended up on the main Reddit, along with, a ton of people quote tweeting me and trying to dunk on me. So I thought we would go over all of it because it's honestly just kind of funny. If you follow me on Twitter, obviously you know I do tend to try and get a little dunk in on 343 here and there, get some internet points that really mean absolutely nothing. And honestly, I'll admit it's not something that's very productive and is probably something I shouldn't do unless I have legitimate criticism. And some of my tweets definitely toe the line between actual criticism and just kind of memeing on 343 for the sake of memeing on 343.
Split screen going forward.
Now that said, this weekend was probably, the furthest that I took it, and it definitely got very, very funny. So it all started a few days ago. I put out this tweet about how Master Chief hasn't had a good game since 2007, yet despite that, he's still one of the most recognizable characters in gaming. The second half of that statement, definitely very true. The first half, obviously a little bit debatable. And then I just said Chief deserves better, and I used a picture of Halo 4 Chief who was sitting there kind of sad. So this one ended up getting a ton of likes, ended up on that stupid gimmick account, Halo Infinite is better than this. So the premise behind this tweet was, since 2007, it's hard to say we've had a universally loved Halo game that Master Chief has been in.
Your Honor, I object because it's devastating to my case.
You can argue that Reach was universally loved, even though it was definitely criticized at the time, but Master Chief wasn't really in it.
Arrest that man! Captain, arrest him!
He's in it as an Easter egg, but I would say that that does not count, though a lot of people kind of disagreed with that, and that's totally fine. I'm not going to debate you on that. Now, I think what people misunderstood here is that while I referenced Master Chief, I still meant the whole package of the game. So Halo 4, a lot of people think the campaign was good. I disagree. But despite that, if you include the multiplayer as the package, it's hard to say that Halo 4 was a truly great Halo game. Moving on to Halo 5. Now, some people for some reason think Halo 5's campaign was good. I just wholeheartedly disagree. I think Halo 5 had a horrible campaign that had a pretty weird story, really bad level design, along with the enemies not being very fun to fight. Now, I did like Halo 5's multiplayer for what it was, but at launch, it was definitely missing a lot of content, though once you roll into Halo Infinite, that got taken to a whole new level, as Halo Infinite's multiplayer was basically the lightest in terms of content that we'd ever gotten for a Halo game. Despite that, though, there are people that really liked Halo Infinite's campaign. Again, I think it was pretty average. I think the open world was pretty uninspired and not necessarily that great. But if you disagree with those points, that's not a huge deal. But I had a whole ton of people respond to this tweet that were fans of Halo 4 and Halo 5 and Infinite, trying to get some dunks in, and in some cases kind of getting pretty upset over, in my opinion, a pretty throwaway tweet. Like I said, most of the responses here either reference Reach had Chief, or they pick out just the campaigns and they ignore the multiplayer, or it's just people that liked Halo 4 or 5 or Halo Infinite and thought they were good games, which is totally fine. I then followed up this tweet because I thought it was funny with a tweet that just said, I love how easy it is to piss off Halo fans. You just say that their favorite game is bad.
Excuse me?
Now, this tweet obviously didn't get as much traction as it isn't really going at any specific person, but the next day is when we really took this to the next level. So I was sitting around the next day and I thought, what if I tweeted out some common tropes and criticisms of every single Halo game and made them all out to be totally shit games? So this is pretty funny because you can see the different fan bases from the different Halo games really get up in arms and pissed off about my opinion. Now, I do want to be clear, none of these takes that I tweeted were by any means unique. In most cases, these are criticisms for these games that have been around forever. However, usually they're outweighed by all the positives that those games had. Obviously, in these tweets, I was only tweeting out what I considered, the negatives, and then I'd throw some shade at it at the start of the tweet to kind of, really piss people off. So the first one was Halo CE. This one I honestly couldn't come up with that much, but I said it was only good because it was the first console game not to control like ass. So it definitely was one of the first console shooters to not feel terrible to play, but that isn't really why it was such an amazing and revolutionary game, but part of that statement definitely is true in my opinion. Then I said it has repetitive and confusing level design. I stand by that. But you do have to understand the game did come out in 2001 with totally different technology, and the standards for single player levels back then were totally different than they are now, and having repetitive level design or levels that weren't necessarily as handholdy was very common back in the day. So it's not really a criticism that you can throw at CE for the time, it's just something you can say in retrospect. I also talked about how it had clunky mechanics. Again, I kind of stand by this, but that's more just because they haven't aged as well as maybe some of the more modern Halo games. But don't get me wrong, if you're a Halo CE CE fan. I know you love your Halo CE mechanics, so it's fine. It's not a big deal. I also just said that the sandbox was boring, and this is mostly just a meme about how everyone thinks the only gun is the Halo CE Magnum, which really isn't the case, especially if you're playing the OG Xbox version, where things like the plasma rifle really play a key part, as it's very, very strong, and a lot of the other weapons have very viable places in the sandbox. But to the average player who didn't really play CE, they see the Magnum and they think the whole game is kind of built around the Magnum, because the Magnum is definitely strong, and so I kind of just threw that in there by saying that it had a boring sandbox. So this tweet, compared to the other games, got about mid-level in terms of the traction. People were coming at me about the clunky mechanics, or that first point about how it was only popular because it was the first console shooter to not feel bad. You can definitely tell in the responses to this one that some people could tell I was trolling, but a lot of people still were taking it at face value and kind of debating with me about Halo CE, thinking I was being pretty serious. There's this tweet by Taylor Brownie where he says, "My channel isn't performing, quick rage bait." I mean, I guess fair play. This person said, "Tell us you didn't grow up playing Halo without telling us you didn't grow up playing Halo," which is a funny tweet. I love that format, and to be honest, I didn't actually play CE as a kid, so it's not even totally incorrect. Now we'll kind of move on to the Halo 2 tweet, which is the one that got the most traction and definitely rustled the most feathers. I tweeted that Halo 2 was carried by Xbox Live, had worse graphics than Halo CE, was a buggy mess that led to exploits, the campaign could have been good, but it was rushed, and the legendary ballots is terrible. Now, some of this stuff I think is true. And now I don't think Halo 2 was carried by Xbox Live. I think Halo 2 and Xbox Live worked hand in hand together to be this huge, amazing kind of revolution in online gaming. Xbox Live would not have been the same without Halo 2, and Halo 2 wouldn't have been the same without Xbox Live. However, it's funnier if you just say it was carried by Xbox Live. I also tweeted that it had worse graphics than the predecessor. Now, in truth, it doesn't, but I think Halo CE's art style holds up better than Halo 2's today. But at the time of Halo 2's release, the graphics were something that people talked up and really gave props to Halo 2 for having. Now, the buggy mess that led to exploits, I just thought it was funny because people have had debates about the button combos for years now, and really you kind of fall on a side and you probably aren't going to move. Some people are a big fan of the button combos, some people think they were terrible. Bungie themselves said they were exploits, but I do think for Halo 2 they added some good depth to the multiplayer, and they really allowed the skill ceiling and the competitive side of Halo 2 to really flourish, and also the speedrunning side of Halo 2 has a lot more depth to it because of these button combos. Now, that said, those definitely existed because the game was sort of buggy due to the rush state of Halo 2. The next point was the campaign could have been good, but it was rushed. I just thought this was funny because obviously the whole game was rushed, and there's definitely a lot that was cut from Halo 2's campaign that would have made it even better than it already was. And then the last point was that the legendary balance is terrible. I actually stand by that. I think the legendary balance in Halo 2 is atrocious. It's by far the most difficult legendary Halo game, and I think there are a lot of parts of it that are just totally BS, and they force you to really memorize things to deal with rather than kind of play through it and counter what the game is throwing at you. You have to memorize where these jackals are, because if you don't, they just one-shot you before you have time to react. Now again, this game came out in 2004. That was much more commonplace back in the day with games, and some of the boss fights and stuff, in my opinion, aren't that amazing, and they're kind of annoying to play on legendary. So I do kind of stand by that last one, that the legendary balance isn't that great. Is it terrible? No, not really. It's just difficult. You can always lower the difficulty and just play on a lower difficulty. And then Halo 2's campaign is a lot of fun. This one got a lot of traction for, probably the worst. This is the one that ended up on the main Halo subreddit, although to my surprise, the mods actually took it down. Props to the r/Halo mods for doing this. They don't do that over on Shit Halo Says. Those guys just shit on people for a living, so go that subreddit. Really cool subreddit. I love it.
Gonna cry.
But you could tell in the Reddit comments, a lot of people there realized I was kind of messing with people. But on Twitter and on the Gimmick account that also posted a screenshot of my tweet, a lot less people realized that, and there were definitely some funny responses. This one had a few more people starting to realize what was going on because it was the second tweet. But the important thing is, and the thing that, kind of got me, because I ended up losing a lot of followers over this, on Saturday and Sunday and Monday, I lost like 50, which is very unusual for my Twitter account. Not a big deal. But it was a lot of people that I think unfollowed because they saw me shitting on their favorite Halo games.
You serious?
Or were just annoyed that I was kind of baiting. I don't know which, but it definitely backfired to a certain degree. This one actually has a funny response from one of my friends, Chris, or Wangless that you might know. He responded and said, "Arash was carried by YouTube clips. Bad takes that are unhinged, fueled by the hatred of Nebraska. Difficulty balance varies from crouchy to tired. L+ ratio." This tweet ended up totally ratioing me, and well played. I thought it was pretty funny. I even got a response from Eli the Ninja, Ninja, who was a Halo 2 pro and currently coaches G1, who said that I smell like sadness and elderberries. I don't know if Eli realized I was trolling or if he thought this was my legitimate take of Halo 2, but regardless, I thought it was hilarious that he responded with this. One guy who I assume was maybe trying to troll back said that Halo 3 was the same, carried by Forge and social features. Brutes are worse than elites, worse voice acting, netcode was terrible, rifles were squirt guns, and that there hasn't been a good Halo since Halo CE. So basically there's never been a good Halo besides the first one, and I think that's a great take. Masters, who's a big time Halo modder, he was one of the head guys on SPV3 if you've ever played that, said that he unironically agrees with all of this, which hey, I guess that's fair. Some person even responded with a poll saying that I have no clue what I'm talking about and should delete my Twitter account for speaking ill of Halo 2, and he put up a poll with two options: delete your Twitter, continue being dumb. I voted for continue being dumb, but 75% of people did say I should delete my Twitter account, so maybe we'll do that. But you can tell in the Halo 2 one, there's a lot more responses of people that are just straight up upset as opposed to trying to debate my points. They're just coming straight at me. I think that covers the Halo 2 tweet though. I think it's time to move on to Halo 3. This one, out of the trilogy, got the least amount of traction, probably because my points toward it were the weakest, but I said that Halo 3 is Halo made for babies because it was watered down too much for casual, which is a little bit true. I mean, Halo 3 mechanically is a watered down version compared to Halo CE or Halo 2, but that was probably for the best. I think that's kind of what allowed Halo 3 to flourish so much, but I thought that was a nice, inflammatory statement to start the tweet. I had said that it had a terrible RNG BR that felt bad to use, which is something that people have been talking about forever. When you're using the BR close range, it's not really that noticeable, but when you get further away, there's that little bit of RNG spread when you're shooting people, and it does lead to some inconsistencies with the battle rifle. I also said that it had a mostly bad sandbox with overpowered equipment. That one I don't really agree with at all, but there definitely are many weapons in Halo 3's sandbox that you don't use much on the multiplayer side. Things like the Spiker come to mind that don't really have a purpose. And while I liked the equipment, there were a lot of people at the time that did not like the equipment, and you can see that with the whole MLG settings where they completely removed equipment out of the game. And then I threw in one of the most common, kind of things that people say when you talk about Halo's success back in the day, and that's where I said that it was only so successful because of lack of competition. I completely disagree with this. I don't think that's why Halo was successful in the past. I think Halo was successful because it was good, and its competition seemed less big because Halo was so big at the time. Back in the day, Halo 3 and the Halo franchise was the Fortnite or the Apex of the time. It and Call of Duty were really the two big dogs, and there was still a ton of other game franchises and games that had player bases and everything, but they weren't as big as Halo and Call of Duty, and I don't think that was due to lack of competition. I think that was just because Call of Duty and Halo were so far ahead. Anyways, as you dive into the fun, responses here, again, a lot of people starting to kind of realize what was going on, and I will be honest, Halo 3 is my favorite game, so it was a little bit harder to come up with kind of digs toward the game, but one person did say that the hit registration was dog shit, and hey, I don't know. One person responded with, I guess he was right on the head since I turned it into a video, but he said, just shitting on things for content's sake, my least favorite type of content creator. And I wasn't actually planning to make a video on this, but I just thought it was kind of funny how it all kind of blew up, so I decided to, but I guess he was right. Crow responded here that his teammates are more successful at baiting, which is just hilarious. One guy even responded with a clown meme, and I agree. One guy asked if I just talk badly about the Halo franchise for a living, as if I don't have tons of videos on my channel praising the different aspects of Halo, but I'm gonna assume maybe he's only seen my Twitter account. One guy even responded that he knew I was joking, but that he never hated me more in his life. And someone responded saying, I don't know, man, I was ready to kill a raccoon or something small after reading this. One guy who must clearly not even follow my account responded, you suck 343's dick, we get it, as if I don't spend most of my time shitting on Halo Infinite, but I guess I can be a 343 shill on one day and then a 343 hater on the next day. I really wear both caps. And those were really the fun ones. The trilogy is when we really got those digs in, because not as many people criticize the trilogy nowadays. One, because it's kind of the peak of Halo, and two, because they're a lot older. Moving on, it gets a lot easier to criticize the games. We had Halo Reach. I stand by most of these points, but I said Halo Reach, lol, more like the death of Halo. It wasn't the death of Halo, but you could argue it was definitely the start of the downfall. It's not like the franchise started plummeting after Reach, but Halo 3 going into Reach was definitely definitely the peak, and you kind of started to dwindle a little bit in terms of franchise popularity after the release of Reach. Here I said Bloom and armor abilities, puke emoji. I stand by that. Bloom is a terrible mechanic. I don't know how people still defend it. I don't know why you want RNG in your FPS shooter, but hey, I guess if you just want to click the trigger really fast and hope your RNG is better than the other person's, be my guest. And before you say, well, just shoot slower, you can totally do that. But if you shoot slower and you die to someone spamming the trigger, that is very frustrating and shouldn't exist in a competitive game. And then obviously armor abilities, I wasn't a fan. I'm sure many people were, but that's a whole different topic. I then said that the game had terrible map design because campaign and multiplayer reused assets, and I totally stand by that. I think that's why a lot of Reach's multiplayer maps are a lot weaker than the previous games because they had to be used both in single player and multiplayer. Now, I do believe they were actually designed first for multiplayer and then thrown into single player, so that might be a totally moot point, but I do think Reach has some of the weaker maps of the franchise. Then I said again, it doesn't even feature the Chief, which got the same responses saying, oh yes it does, whatever, and also isn't actually a dig because I didn't mind that Halo Reach didn't have Master Chief. I think it's nice to have spin-offs or just main games that don't necessarily feature Master Chief. Then I just said the DMR is less than the BR. I think the BR is cooler to use, but I totally understand people who like single shot weapons over the burst. And then I said it was carried by Forge. I do really think Reach was carried by Forge. So much of OG Reach's matchmaking toward, the end of the game was Forge maps and Forge creations, and custom games in this game were very, very good because of the Forge, but the game wasn't necessarily carried by Forge. It was just really helped out by the fact that Forge was able to make up for the weaker map pool. One guy responded, and he is my friend, he was also trolling, but he said Buddy is just on his Halo hate run, saying as much as he can about how bad Halo is to get likes. This is terrible. First Act Man, and now you. So what's up, Act Man? I guess we're on the same level now. One guy just said he got one right. Crazy. Eckhart's Ladder even hopped in to say unironically this. This guy responded, and I don't actually get what he was trying to say, but he said, I mean, I hate every one of these takes as you're generally just shitting on Infinite, but I can't disagree with them. Reach was carried heavily by Forge, although it did have a great progression system. One guy responded asking if I just love having the worst takes. One guy responded just saying kinda weird way to tell people you're smoking crack. Hopping on over to Halo 4. Now these start getting a lot less traction. One, because I think people realized I was trolling, and two, probably because they're a little bit more agreeable in my opinion. But I said Halo 4 more like Call of Halo, no ranked except on a website. Totally stand by that. Halo 4 removing ranked in the game, and the only way to see it was on the website. Totally dumb. Loadouts and ordinances. Again, totally dumb. Boring campaign enemies like Promethean Knights. I hated fighting those things. I still hate fighting those things. I think they're some of the worst designed enemies in Halo. And then I said QTEs in Halo. Lol. And these aren't necessarily a huge problem in Halo's 4 campaign, but they were the first time that Halo had QTEs in the campaign, and it felt really like a COD campaign in the parts that had those. And then I said, have you heard the BR? Because the BR sound in Halo 4 is some of the worst sounding weapon design that I think we have in the entire franchise. Moving on, this one wasn't really that big a deal, but it's H2A. I said watered down Halo 4 that should have been canceled. Guns are too easy to use, lack of maps, terrible visibility, basically no customization until recently. And then the only point that I think is really debatable is that I said these guys are making Tatanka not good. The Halo 4 one and the H2A one didn't really get any funny responses. Some people saying it's bait, some people just saying they agree. Moving on, Halo 5. Halo 5 is a good game, but a horrible Halo game. This isn't something that's unique. This has been said for many, many years. I also said that the game had a bad art style. Again, pretty common criticism.
Disgusting!
Power Rangers, I just thought that was funny. And then I said, why would you add all those abilities to Halo? Designed for ADHD crackheads who need to smack buttons on their controller instead of using their brains. And then I closed it out by saying carried by Forge again. So if you watched the channel for a while, you know I actually did like Halo 5. My biggest criticism was just at launch, it was missing content. But I think overall the gameplay and the Forge and everything like that was a lot of fun. Now it definitely strayed pretty far from the core Halo formula with all the abilities that it added, but it did bring a lot of other core aspects of the game back that Halo 4 had removed, like equal starts, weapons on maps, and many other features like that. So it kind of went both ways. The character itself felt a lot stronger with the thrust, with the ground pound, with the Spartan charge, with the hover and all that good stuff, which did give the player more power and more abilities to be able to do outplays, but it also lets you kind of get away from bad decision making more often. Now you could argue that if Halo 5 wasn't called Halo 5, it could have maybe been a lot more successful because it wouldn't have had the Halo IP and long-term Halo fans kind of criticizing it for the changes that it made, but at the same time, if it didn't have Halo's IP, it might have never gotten off the ground anyways. So that one's kind of hard to know in retrospect, but I would say in all honesty, Halo 5 was a good Halo game. A lot of people criticize it for the advanced movement, and really all I would say to that is when you look at Call of Duty, you don't say games like Advanced Warfare aren't Call of Duty, you just say it was Advanced Movement COD, right? And I think that's pretty similar to Halo 5. Sure, Halo 5 wasn't a core classic Halo game, it was Advanced Movement Halo. And for what it was, I think it was a lot of fun. The responses to this one were kind of similar to the last two. A lot of people just agreed. One guy said this is the Halo that made all of his coworkers quit. One guy said this isn't even an unhinged take, it's just the truth. I even forgot in the tweet to criticize the terrible campaign. One guy said, bro, why are you attacking us ADHD crackheads? Because I will be honest, Halo 5 toward the end of it, you had to click so much stuff on your controller to be competitive. One guy even said absolutely based king tier take. Overall though, I think it would have been fun to see Halo 5 on PC, although I don't know if we ever will at this point. And moving on, we got last but not least, Halo Infinite. No. And this one, I didn't even bother to come up with a shitty bait take for. I literally just said, actually, this one just speaks for itself. Just look at how it's performing. Skull emoji times 10. Obviously, since I didn't really give people much room to debate there, not too many people responded to this one, but one guy did say, it has the best gameplay. I think that's pretty debatable. I think Halo Infinite has fine gameplay, but I don't know if I'd go as far as to say it was the best. Kevin actually responded to me on this one saying, I'm convinced you're a COD player disguised as a Halo player, to which I just responded, Valorant. And then one guy responded saying, even worse. One guy said, I've been seeing you on my timeline, and honestly, your takes are great. And then another guy responded saying, his takes are sexy at best. Stop being such a shill. And that pretty much wraps up pissing off everyone in the Halo community saga. I thought the tweets were pretty funny. In retrospect, probably not a great idea to kind of enrage a community that's already up in arms and at each other anyways. Depending on whenever this video comes out, we did recently get some news that will maybe get some people more, on the same page with Bonnie Ross leaving 343 and the restructuring. Maybe that'll get the community more, together. I don't know. But Halo's community is definitely very fractured at the moment. These takes probably didn't help, but I thought it was pretty funny, and reading the responses was also pretty funny. Would I do it again? Yeah, probably. And with that said, I'll see you all next time.